As much as I love the NBA, it is by no means a perfect league. And right now, if I was to ask you, what do you think the biggest issue is with the NBA as a whole? Is it a lack of parity? Is it too much player movement? Is it still too much of a focus on super teams? I would argue that resting players and players not playing enough games is the biggest issue the league faces right now. And as of right now, they have attempted to fix that issue. Really quickly though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks. If you've never done Prize Picks before, right now is an awesome time to get into it with the return of the NFL and the return of the NBA coming up soon, and I have a fantastic offer for you as well. Right now, first-time depositors, first-time users at Prize Picks can get a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you use code SPORTING and you click the link in the description. So if you've never played before, you can deposit $100. Prize Picks will match it. You'll have $200 in your account to start with Prize Picks today when you use code SPORTING or you click the link in the description. Now, if you've never used Prize Picks before, of course, you're wondering what exactly is Prize Picks. Well, you can see behind me, they're going to put together some numbers for NBA, NFL, all kinds of different stuff, and it's just you against the numbers. You pick between 2 and 6 of these numbers, and you pick more or less for each player. So whether it be in the NFL, rushing yards, touchdowns scored, receptions, passing yards, or once the NBA gets started, points, assists, rebounds, combined points, assists, rebounds, three-pointers made, you go through, you select more or less, and the more that you get correct within your 2 and 6 selection, the more cash you win. And the other thing I love about Prize Picks is they're always on top of these promotions. They'll give you a free square where, 0.5 rushing yards for a particular player, 0.5 points during the NBA season. Different days of the week, they'll do different promotions. It's something that's always exciting and to keep on top of their Prize Picks. And again, you pick between 2 and 6 players and can win up to 25 times your money on Prize Picks. And the best part about all this, you don't have to worry about competing against anybody else. It's just you against these numbers. You're not competing against anyone else other than picking these numbers correctly. Again, if you want to get started, first-time users can get a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you use code SPORTING. You click the link in the description. It's a really exciting time to get started with Prize Picks, and thank you again to Prize Picks for sponsoring this video. Now, if you follow the NBA, maybe you're excited for a national TV game on a certain night, or even you've tried to go to a game, it's pretty likely that you've experienced this issue for the NBA, which is you get really excited about a matchup between two teams. There's a reason that it's on national television, or there's a reason that you want to go to the game. It's to see particular players play, and then a couple hours before the game, it comes out that these guys aren't playing. And it's not because they're hurt, it's just because the teams are resting them and trying to get prepared for the postseason, and they don't see the value in playing a player in that particular regular season game when they have some more important games later on. It is a theme of the league over the last decade that almost every single team in the league actively rests their players, even if there isn't a specific injury that they're attempting to, prevent or rehab them from. They're just not playing. And so the league has recognized this as an issue for years, but they haven't been able to find a way to actually regulate it. Recently, they put together some new rules that essentially say for national TV games, you can't rest multiple stars in the same game. And they have qualifications for what they say a star is. You have to be, have made an all-star appearance or an all-NBA team or won an award in recent years. And those guys, you cannot rest multiple players of that variety on the same night during national TV games. And the punishment is that you're going to get fined. And on paper, this seems like a great solution, right? Again, I'm sure there are plenty of people watching this video that either purchased tickets to go to a game, which is the bigger issue, or got really excited about a national TV game, and then the players that you actually wanted to see play just didn't suit up at all. And sometimes that's going to happen due to injuries. Like, that's an unfortunate part of the way that, buying tickets ahead of time works for games. But a lot of times it is just guys resting. And there's a real competitive advantage to this for teams. There's a reason that they do this. It's not an accident. It's something that actively helps them, in their opinion, be more ready for the postseason. And the first issue with all this, as we've talked about before, is just that the season is too long. The NBA season does not need to be 82 games. It's been known for a while that it is too many games. It's too many games cramped all together when you add in the travel as well. And the only reason that the league has not decreased the number of games is just because it makes them money. Like, there's no way that you're going to be able to convince the league as well as the other owners around the league to take 12 games, to take 6 home games off their schedule and go down to a 70-game schedule, or maybe even less than that, because they're going to make less money. And that's the only reason that they haven't adjusted the length of the schedule. And so the other way to try and combat players being rested for these games is by putting in some kind of punishment, trying to regulate this in a certain way by fining teams. But there's two big issues with this version of regulation for the NBA, and it's one of the reasons why in the past, when I've talked about, teams resting players, I've mentioned how difficult it's going to be to really, truly fix this problem and regulate it. The first issue is, I don't really think a team is going to care all that much about whatever the fine is. Let's just say we're 60 games into the year and the Pelicans are playing whoever on national TV, and Zion and Brandon Ingram, all these guys are technically healthy, and they rest both of those players. I think it's like $100,000 fine for these big NBA franchises that make a ton of money every year. If they really feel like it's going to help them in the long term to have both of those guys rest, I don't really see any reason why New Orleans would look at that and be, concerned with that fine. And or the other issue here is what qualifies as resting a player. If Zion and Brandon Ingram both dress and play like 10 minutes because of a coach's decision, then you avoid the fine and those guys ultimately get to rest. That's the thing that's difficult here. You can't actually force these teams to play their players. If they really desperately want to rest their guys multiple times a year, they're going to figure out a way to do it, certainly in non-national TV games, but even in these national TV games, they can either just pay the fine. I know the fine increases in stacks, the more often you violate this policy, or like I said, they might just not play them as many minutes. They might just play them 10, 12 minutes, which makes honestly the whole situation even worse, because then it's just really uncomfortable and awkward for the fan experience in person as well as on TV, because you're waiting for these guys to come back in a game and play the rest of the game, and they just don't. And it's very clear that these teams are actively violating the policy that's been put in place. They're just kind of working around it. And this has always been the biggest issue, is that the season is too long is the primary reason that teams want to rest guys. Now, they would still, if you made the season 70 games or 56 games and there was no policy in place, teams would 100% still rest their players. It's a lot of basketball games. They mostly care about the hopefully 16 wins that they're going to get at the end of the season and the postseason to try and win a title. That's ultimately the goal. That's why resting exists. So shortening the season isn't a one-all, fix here down to 70 or 56 games, whatever the case may be. But the primary reason that teams started resting players in the first place is because of the length of the season and wanting to save their players for the postseason. And adding in a policy while keeping the games 82 during the year isn't going to fix it the way that you would hope that it would. And they're trying to do this in increments. They're focusing on the national TV games. They're focusing on not doing multiple stars resting in the same game. But when it provides a competitive advantage, as most teams around the league have decided that it does, if you're a postseason team and or if you're a team that isn't going to be very good and it's towards the end of the year and you've got Damian Lillard on your team and you decide to, sit him for the last 10 games of the year, maybe there's a national TV game in there, and you just want to go and try and tank. Like, there's a competitive advantage aspect to this, whether it be for teams that are bad towards the end of the year that just sit some of their best players to try and get a better draft pick, or teams that are good during the year trying to save their guys for the postseason. It helps these teams out. And this measure that they've put in place, although it's a nice start and it's good that they're thinking of ways to try and regulate this, I don't think it's actually going to have all that much of an impact. And we're still going to have plenty of teams resting players, maybe not specifically on national TV games, but if the goal of this overall is to prevent teams from sitting healthy star players during the year, it's not going to accomplish that goal. I'd imagine the NBA knows that, they're aware of that, and they're going to continue to look and see how they can fix this issue moving forward and what this policy does and maybe how they can add to it in the future. But there's just way too many ways to work around it, and it certainly does not 100% solve the issue, nor would just shortening the season, nor would adding on to this policy. It's a complicated issue and one that, quite frankly, until the competitive advantage aspect of it is eliminated, which is basically impossible, teams are always going to figure out a way to do this. The difference now is they're going to do it in direct contrast to what the league actually wants them to do, stated by this new policy. But just because it's a difficult issue to solve doesn't mean that it's impossible, and I would expect the league to continue to explore some options. And I'm curious, down in the comment section, what you guys think the league should do about this. How do they fix the players resting issue? What's the solution? What do you think that they should do and they should implement in terms of rules, in terms of regulations, maybe in addition to what they've already done? Maybe it is shortening the season, maybe it's a combination of things. How does the league actually go about fixing their biggest problem?